The acrid stench of my burned house was still in my hair when she strutted into my courtroom like she owned the place. There I sat, Judge Miriam Blackwood, black robes, gavel in hand, staring at the woman who'd just committed arson against a sitting judge. The sheer balls of it made my teeth clench. But Bryn Ashworth Sterling had no idea what she'd just walked into. When you torch a judge's home, you better pray she doesn't get the chance to return the favor legally. And honey, I was about to serve up a 5-course meal of justice with federal prison time. This HOA Karen thought burning down my house would shut me up. Instead, it lit a fire under me that would consume her entire criminal empire. I was Judge Miriam Blackwood, respected, feared by criminals, and completely shattered. I'd just buried Harold after watching cancer devour him piece by piece. 28 years of marriage gone. Our 1940s craftsman home in Pinewood Estates felt like a mausoleum. Pinewood used to be where blue-collar families raised kids and retired teachers tended flower gardens. Then the money moved in. Enter the queen bee of this gentrification army, Bryn Ashworth Sterling. Picture every entitled suburban nightmare you've ever encountered. Then add designer athleisure and a god complex. My first encounter happened while installing Harold's memorial fence. We'd planned this 6-foot privacy barrier together during his final months. The sweet scent of his prize roses filled the morning air as I worked. You must be the widow. Not condolences, not introduction, just cold assessment. Judge Blackwood. I corrected, wiping soil from my hands. Right, the judge. I'm Bryn, HOA president. We have a problem. Out came the pink tape measure. She measured my fence with theatrical precision. 6 feet 2 inches. Our regulations clearly state 6-foot maximum. That's a $500 violation plus immediate removal costs. Show me that regulation. 5 minutes of searching produced nothing because the regulation didn't exist. My fence measured exactly 6 feet. That evening, I pulled up court records. 3 years ago, Sterling Premium Builders had appeared before my bench trying to scam an 80-year-old veteran out of $30,000 for emergency roof repairs. The roof was fine. I'd ruled against them hard. This fence was revenge, pure and simple. But Bryn had made a critical error. She'd targeted a woman who'd spent 20 years sentencing murderers without flinching. Someone with absolutely nothing left to lose and complete understanding of how the legal system could be weaponized. Within 2 weeks, Bryn launched psychological warfare disguised as HOA enforcement. Certified letters started arriving like clockwork. 7 pieces of registered mail in 10 days, each more absurd than the last. Violation Notice 1. Harold's memorial stone violated uniform landscape aesthetic. Violation Notice 2. My black mailbox created visual discord. Violation Notice 3. Excessive bird feeding creating nuisance conditions. My single feeder attracted cardinals, Harold's favorite birds. Each letter demanded fines between $200 to $500, threatening liens and legal action. But I'd memorized Colorado's HOA statutes during law school. These letters contain more legal holes than a mob lawyer's alibi. Real HOA fines must be reasonable, related to actual violations, and properly documented in bylaws. I spent 3 evenings building my counterattack, filing formal complaints with the Colorado Real Estate Commission detailing Bryn's procedural violations. But Bryn wasn't finished with amateur hour. My security cameras captured pure criminal stupidity. Bryn arrived with her designer and personal trainer, spending 2 hours manufacturing evidence for non-existent violations. They created fraudulent documentation to support fraudulent fines. In my courtroom, we called this conspiracy to commit fraud. Then Walt Henderson knocked on my door with disturbing news. Judge, this Bryn woman's been systematically targeting people. Remember the Rodriguez family? Forced them to remove their Virgin of Guadalupe garden statue. Called it non-conforming religious imagery. The pattern crystallized. Bryn was running systematic harassment against anyone who didn't fit her suburban master race fantasy. Hispanic families, single mothers, elderly residents on fixed incomes, and now a widowed judge who'd previously ruled against her husband's contractor scams. Bryn's next move crossed into felony territory. She struck while I was downtown. Sentencing criminals, conducting an illegal emergency property inspection through my backyard like she'd bought the deed. The audacity peaked when she deliberately left my back gate wide open. When I arrived home, my worst nightmare was realized. Gavel was missing. This 14-year-old tabby wasn't just a pet. He was Harold's final gift to me, rescued from the courthouse parking lot 3 years ago. The cat who'd sat on Harold's lap during chemo treatments. 3 days of searching later, I found Gavel barely conscious in an oxygen tent, ribs broken, severely dehydrated. $800 in emergency surgery. The vet's diagnosis made my hands shake. These injuries are consistent with being chased by machinery. Security footage revealed the truth. 1 hour after Bryn's illegal trespassing, her landscaping crew had arrived with industrial leaf blowers, terrorizing my traumatized cat through the open gate she'd left. They'd chased him 2 blocks before he fell into a storm drain, broken and dying. But here's where Bryn made her fatal mistake. She'd just committed multiple felonies against a sitting judge who understood exactly how to weaponize the legal system for maximum destruction. I filed criminal charges for unlawful entry and animal cruelty, then called Channel 7. Sarah Morgan's investigation revealed Bryn's systematic targeting of minority and elderly residents. The community response was nuclear. Justice for Gavel exploded across social media. 3 law firms offered pro bono services. The Colorado Attorney General's office called about civil rights violations. My salvation arrived in the form of Patricia "Pat" Donnelly, a retired FBI agent who'd been conducting surveillance on Bryn for weeks. "Judge, what I'm about to show you changes everything," Pat said, spreading photographs across my kitchen table. Bryn Ashworth Sterling doesn't exist. The photos revealed multiple identities: Rebecca Ashworth from California, Beth Sterling from Phoenix, Sandra McKenzie from Detroit, with a federal prisoner ID. She was a professional community destroyer who'd stolen over $4 million across 4 states in the past decade. "She's been planning to burn your house down since day one," Pat explained. "The harassment was misdirection while she prepared the perfect arson. Your property is worth $180,000, but Harold's insurance upgrades pushed rebuild value to $320,000. The implications were staggering. This woman was a federal fugitive operating under stolen identities while in witness protection, committing the exact crimes she'd supposedly reformed from. My kitchen transformed into a federal command center. Pat, Walt, and attorney Rebecca Morgan surrounded Harold's table like avenging angels planning biblical justice. "We're not just prosecuting neighborhood harassment," Rebecca announced. "We're dismantling a decade-long federal crime spree that's destroyed 15 communities. Federal charges first: mail fraud across state lines, wire fraud for electronic HOA theft, identity theft using witness protection programs, RICO conspiracy for systematic community destruction." We were talking federal sentences that would keep her locked up until climate change drowned the prison. Pat coordinated federal agency involvement with retired FBI efficiency. Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Treasury Financial Crimes, FBI Interstate Fraud Task Force were all drooling over this case. My role was evidence preservation and victim coordination. HOA finances were completely transparent to community members who knew how to request them properly. We were about to demand 5 years of detailed accounting and watch Bryn's embezzlement empire crumble. Bryn's response proved she'd graduated to domestic terrorism. The attack came while I was downtown, captured by my military-grade security system in evidence quality high definition. At 2:47 p.m., unmarked trucks disgorged a crew that moved with professional efficiency. These weren't landscapers. They were arson specialists creating accelerant highways around my foundation, installing unmarked propane connections, positioning dead vegetation in patterns guaranteeing fire spread toward Bryn's $1 million target. The brass balls peaked when Bryn arrived with Channel 7's news crew, claiming she'd received anonymous tips about dangerous fire hazards. "Community safety is my only concern," she told cameras while standing directly over planted evidence of her own arson conspiracy. Fire Marshal Jake Morrison spotted the planted evidence immediately. "Judge, someone's setting up your house to burn. This isn't code violation. This is premeditated murder." But Bryn's desperation reached criminal crescendo when Morrison refused to condemn my property. Her response was captured on his body camera, a cash bribery attempt that transformed misdemeanor harassment into federal corruption charges. "Inspector, surely we can handle this situation efficiently," Bryn said, sliding a thick envelope across his clipboard. Morrison's camera recorded every incriminating word. Federal warrants issued within hours for Bryn, her husband, and their entire crew. Bank accounts frozen, sterling premium placed under federal asset forfeiture. The explosion at 3:17 a.m. ripped me from dreams into a nightmare that would haunt Bryn for the rest of her federal prison sentence. I was sleeping in Walt's guest room when the blast shook windows 3 blocks away. Through Walt's window, I watched 28 years of memories erupt into flames. Harold's house, our sanctuary, the kitchen where we'd planned retirement, all disappearing into federal evidence. But Bryn's criminal overconfidence had created the most beautiful trap in prosecution history. Insurance investigator Jennifer Park discovered Bryn had filed preliminary damage claims at 2:30 a.m., 47 minutes before my house was actually ignited. She submitted paperwork claiming her house would suffer fire damage before your house was even burning. Park explained, "That's documentary evidence of premeditated murder." The community response was immediate. Neighbors appeared with righteous fury that made federal agents take notes. Then came the moment that would live in prosecution legend. Bryn actually showed up at the fire scene in designer athleisure and full makeup at 4:30 a.m. This tragic accident reinforces why our HOA must maintain strict safety standards, she told Channel 7 with theatrical grief, standing 50 feet from the house she'd just had torched. FBI agents were recording every word for her murder trial, while federal marshals prepared dawn arrest warrants based on overwhelming evidence. 7 days later, Bryn walked into my courtroom in federal custody, orange jumpsuit replacing designer athleisure, facing charges that would keep her locked up until archaeologists discovered her remains. My courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Federal marshals, FBI agents, prosecutors from 4 states filled the gallery. 17 families Bryn had terrorized were present as witnesses. The charges took 4 minutes to read. Attempted murder of a federal judge, first-degree arson, insurance fraud across multiple states, money laundering, criminal conspiracy, RICO violations, identity theft, witness protection fraud, and systematic civil rights violations. But the moment that would be replayed on legal documentaries came when Bryn addressed the court directly. Judge Blackwood has used her position to orchestrate a vendetta against law-abiding homeowners. She's weaponized the federal government against citizens exercising legitimate HOA authority. Judge Morrison's response carried 20 years of federal bench authority. "Miss McKenzie, you stand accused of attempting to murder a federal judge by burning down her house while she slept. You are not a victim of judicial vendetta. You are a domestic terrorist." Bond denied. Remanded to federal custody pending trial. 2 years later, I stood in my rebuilt kitchen watching Cardinals feast at Harold's Memorial Feeder while federal maximum security served Bryn McKenzie her daily helping of justice. Life without parole in a concrete box where domestic terrorists contemplate their choices for eternity. Federal juries took 3 hours and 47 minutes to convict both Ashworth Sterlings on all counts. Bryn received life without parole for attempted murder, plus consecutive sentences that would keep her locked up until climate change turned Colorado into beachfront property. The $3.2 million in seized assets was distributed to victims across 4 states, creating the largest HOA fraud restitution in American history. Pinewood transformed from terrorized kingdom to model community that law schools now study. Walt Henderson reigned as unanimously elected HOA president, implementing transparency measures making embezzlement impossible. Our reformed bylaws required community approval for fines over $50 and prohibited systematic targeting based on ethnicity, age, or economic status. The Judge Harold Blackwood Memorial Scholarship had raised $750,000 supporting first-generation college students studying community law. This year's recipient was Maria Rodriguez, heading to Harvard Law with dreams of protecting vulnerable communities nationwide. My message for anyone battling HOA nightmares: document everything. Organize your neighbors. Remember that bullies only win when good people stay silent. Your horror story could become someone else's salvation. Drop a comment sharing your own HOA nightmare. You're not alone in fighting these suburban dictators. Subscribe for more HOA stories because next week we're destroying the tax assessor who tried stealing an entire neighborhood for personal profit. That revenge was equally biblical. Together, we're building communities where justice wins and criminals lose permanently.